Even Atlanteans have their own underwater Lost Kingdom legends. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 15th and final movie in the DCEU, DC's 2023 superhero sequel, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom stars Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and was directed by James Wan. 4 years after the events of the first Aquaman film, it tells the story of Aquaman and his half-brother Orm as they're forced to work together to save the world. 10 years after it soared onto screen with Man of Steel, the DCEU has thrown its final punch. It's been a chaotic and inconsistent ride, so it seems only fitting that the 15th and final film in the franchise would be an Aquaman sequel. I know that first Aquaman movie has its fans. I'm not one of them, but I do think the movie's okay. That said, I don't think even the biggest Aquaman fans anticipated this movie being the send-off to a decade-long franchise. To be fair, any film would have struggled in this position, essentially being made moot before it was even released. The pre-announced termination of the franchise certainly affected box office performance and colored audience opinions of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, but for what was essentially rendered into a meaningless movie by studio decisions, this was surprisingly okay. For a cinematic franchise that prided itself on clumsily linking its films and inserting countless superhero cameos, it's interesting that its final film makes no such connections. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a sequel to 2018's Aquaman, so there are obviously character and story links there, but there are no final Justice League cameos here, no connection to past franchise events. Instead, it's refreshingly self-contained. By not trying to build up to something big, the film's able to just exist as its own story, one that mostly works. It's a logical continuation of the first Aquaman movie. That film had a lot to introduce. World building, characters, lore, conflicts, while also trying to sort of be an origin story for Aquaman. In essence, it was trying to do too much and felt disjointed and rushed as a result. This sequel is certainly not immune to some of these issues, but it does have a much more straightforward story that's interesting and, dare I say, enjoyable. As I alluded to, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom definitely has its issues, many of which it shares with its predecessor. The visual effects and CGI are once again frustratingly inconsistent. There are some environments and some shots that look good, but then there are others that look cheesy at best. The underwater sequences are somehow worse this time around, though that may be attributed to the fact that the vast majority of these underwater scenes are dialogue scenes, so we're subjected to quite a bit of that awkward-looking underwater conversation style from the first film. Seems only natural, then, that this film is similarly loaded with clunky exposition. But I will say that this film manages to balance its tones a bit better than its predecessor. It still has its silly, cartoonish, comic booky moments, and some dark, serious elements as well, but is able to differentiate between them better. There's some cheese still, and some lame dialogue, but a decent chunk of the humor actually works this time. Most notably in the form of the brotherly buddy comedy and entertaining chemistry between Aquaman and Orm. Possibly the most striking aspect of this film was its surprisingly strong thematic underpinnings. With its global warming causing villain, the climate change and environmental activism themes come across a bit heavy-handed at times, but it felt like a fitting message for a movie about the defender of the ocean. However, it's with its family themes that this film truly finds its footing. Family was a major component of the first film, but it was mostly used as a means of furthering the plot. This time around, it tries to get at the characters themselves. The relationship between fathers and sons is the first family theme to emerge here, popping up in several forms. Arthur and his newborn son, Arthur and his own father, and Black Manta continuing to try to avenge his father's death. The fatherhood themes seem like they're going to be central to the story, but really only serve to bookend the film. Instead, brotherhood comes to the forefront as the primary familial focus. There are parallels within the expository lore, but the exploration of brotherhood mostly comes from the relationship between Arthur and Orm. It's a bit simplistic and cheesy, and there's nothing groundbreaking, but it's enjoyable nonetheless. Really, the same can be said of the movie as a whole. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is Arthur and Orm. I was hesitant about this team-up coming into the film, considering the story of the first film and how underutilized Orm had been there, but the brotherly buddy comedy angle here was easily my favorite thing about this movie. It's silly, but it's extremely entertaining, thanks to some surprisingly good chemistry between Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson. It's not the most profound or subversive thing, but this character team-up injects some nice heart into the story as well. Speaking of which, the second pro has got to be the thematic underpinnings. There is some nice, albeit heavy-handed, environmental messaging at play here, but where this film really shines thematically is with its exploration of family. There are a number of father-son relationships touched on here, but the major familial through-line is the bond between brothers, most obviously exemplified by the relationship between Arthur and Orm. Like I mentioned before, this added both humor and heart to the film, and was a satisfying and fitting follow-up to the clumsy handling of Orm and his relationship with Arthur in the first film. On the con side, the biggest issue is the villain. I don't understand it, but these movies do not do Black Manta justice. I don't read the comics, so I don't even have any pre-existing connection with this character, but I do know that he's supposed to be the big baddie to Aquaman. In the first film, he had to split the villain bill and was essentially reduced to a henchman. Things are a bit better this time around, and Mateen delivers a committed performance, but the character once again lacks any sort of agency. He's slightly more formidable and imposing, but he's still a very one-note pawn. Con number 2 is how simple the film is. Really, this kind of borders on being a mixed aspect for me. Compared to the overloaded first film, the relatively straightforward nature of this story was a refreshing change of pace. It was enjoyable and slightly more interesting, but it also felt a bit throwaway. This was probably in part due to the film's unfortunate position of being the final movie in a prematurely ended franchise, but everything wraps up a little conveniently. Again, to a certain extent, I actually appreciated this. It doesn't leave us with many loose ends that can never be tied, and it gives us a sense of innocent optimism. But at the same time, it's hard not to be a little underwhelmed by the simplicity of the writing. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom 3 out of 5 paws. Although it suffers from some of the same story and VFX issues as its predecessor, plus the added challenge of being the final film in a long-running franchise, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom still manages to deliver some aquatic fun with its straightforward story and entertaining brotherly buddy comedy. I would recommend Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom to fans of silly and boisterous comic book movies. This isn't a dark and serious story, nor is it some big thoughtful send-off for the DCEU. So if you're looking for something profound, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But if you're craving a dumb, fun superhero movie that feels like a logical story and stylistic continuation of the first Aquaman movie, you're gonna be met with some crowd-pleasing aquatic shenanigans. If you liked Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I would recommend Planet of the Vampires. Cited by James Wan as a major influence on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, this 1960s Italian B-movie blends sci-fi and horror to tell a story of explorers who crash land on a dangerous planet. There are a number of parallels between this planet and Aquaman's Necros, including the state of its inhabitants. If you want another part terrestrial, part aquatic superhero film, you might want to check out Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This MCU sequel features Marvel's version of Atlantis, Talakin, and also explores the challenges of leadership and family expectations. And if you want another fun superhero film featuring brothers, you should watch Thor: Ragnarok. Among the MCU's most colorful and comedic entries, this third film in the Thor franchise prominently features family, both as villains and reconciled allies. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie about brothers? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies. The way life should be.